Let me show you how you can quickly bring up the mobile arrows in Auto Layout Carousels in 7.1 so that you can go from these arrows here on the side to these ones at the bottom. In order to achieve this, we basically need to do only three things. We need to hide the desktop arrows, we need to display the mobile arrows, and then we need to wrap everything inside a media query of our choice. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I already have my auto layout here with the side arrows enabled within the section. So like I mentioned, the first thing we need to do is hide the desktop arrows. To be able to hide them, we need to know what they are called first so that we can hide that entire element. So I pretty much landed on one of the elements that is just creating the left side arrow. Now, if I keep looking up, I pretty much want to find where the end of this element is, or actually where the beginning of this element is, because I want to get rid of the whole thing, not just the arrow and not just the background. We can see that there are a bunch of elements, and actually these ones for the desktop arrows are a little bit confusing because they stretch out way more than the button itself. So if we go all the way up here, you're going to notice that we have this really big container that just says desktop arrows, and then user items list carousel arrow wrapper, and then user items list carousel arrow wrapper left. So this whole container is holding that left side button. And then down here we have another really big container that is holding the right side button. So considering the fact that these two share that class of desktop arrows, that is the one that I'm going to be targeting via CSS so I can hide these two big elements. Let's go ahead and set that up really quickly. So desktop arrows, and we're going to go ahead and set this to display none. So once I do that, you can see how the arrows disappeared from screen. Now, one thing we need to note is that the desktop arrows class is pretty generic. It's not really telling us that this has to do with the auto layout carousel or with this specific section or anything like that. So if we were to use this class as is, we run the risk of editing or modifying something else that we don't want to touch. So in order to avoid that, and considering the fact that I want to make sure that this customization applies to any other auto layout carousel that I have on the page, I'm going to go back into my inspect element tool, and then I'm going to look for a class that represents that auto layout carousel layout. So looking all the way up here, this one contains somewhere inside it those desktop arrows. So this is the class that I'm going to be using, user items list carousel. Let's add that one in here, user items list carousel. And now we can be sure that only the auto layout carousels are going to get those desktop arrows modified. So now the next step would be to show the mobile arrows. And now in order to be able to show them, we need to be able to target them via CSS. So the easiest way to find them inside the structure is to basically inspect them through the mobile view, because that's where we can see the element on the screen. So it's just easier to access. So let's go ahead and inspect those elements and see what we find. All right, so I landed again on the SVG that is creating that arrow path. And then if we start looking upwards, we can see that that one is sitting within this button element that has a class of mobile arrow button right. So this one is the right side button. And then we have another one up here that is for the left side button. And we can see that both of them are sitting within this container called mobile arrows. So if we were to target that mobile arrows container and then set it to display block, we're going to be able to show the arrows whenever we want. So let's go ahead and get started by setting this up. I'm going to be using that class of mobile arrows. And then since we mentioned that we wanted to make sure that only auto layout carousel arrows get modified, I'm also going to be including this class of user items list carousel in the selector. Basically because, again, I already know that this container is holding somewhere inside it the mobile arrows. So I know that I can set up my selector this way. So once I have that there, what I can do, let's open this up so that we can see what we're doing. But basically here, what we can do is just set the display value. Now, in this case, we can't quite use display block, and let me show you why. If we were to set this to display block, you can see how the arrows do show up here on the side. However, they don't really carry the same layout that they have on mobile. And that is because on mobile, they're using a different value for display. In fact, you can see here that this is altering the way that they were showing up before. So here, if we take a quick look at that mobile arrows container on the right side, we're going to see that inside a media query that Squarespace uses to display them on smaller screens at 575 pixels and lower, we have the display value set to flex instead of block. So because we want to mimic that same look, we're going to change our display value to flex as well. And that is obviously going to leave everything looking the same way on mobile. But now if we go into desktop, we can see that we also carry on the same look. And now the third and final step here is to wrap all of this inside a media query. So here is where we're going to determine when we want these two changes to happen. So I think I'm going to be using here a media screen and max width breakpoint of 960 pixels. You can go ahead and adjust that to your liking. Now you know that the breakpoint that Squarespace uses for the mobile arrows is 575. So if you want to use that as a reference, you can go ahead and do that. You can just use something bigger than that number so that you can show them sooner, but it doesn't have to be 960 pixels. And now once I have that there, I can go ahead, let's actually refresh this one. It's going to be easier to see. But here you can note that we now have the arrows showing up here. If we were to look up here, you can see that at 960 pixels, we get those mobile arrows showing up. And of course, they're going to be remaining in place until we hit really, really thin screens. All right, and that's everything that I have for you today. I really hope that you found this trick helpful. If you did, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.